I think the real question is, why would you hesitate to capitalize your own system? Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents channel. My name is Jesse Durham. Today we're going to be discussing the concept of not being afraid to capitalize. This is one of R. Nelson Nash's key principles in discussing and sharing the idea that you can become your own banker. So what I would preface with is saying that Jesus himself, for example, would very often say, fear not, fear not, fear not. Likewise, I would point to the simple fact that it seems that we do not always make our best choices when under the duress of fear. So being in a state of fear is not optimal, perhaps for making financial decisions and choices. And it would seem obvious to me then that a position of strength, being well capitalized, it doesn't matter if you're a household, it doesn't matter if you're running a business, if you're making investments, you can't have too much capital. You can't have too much access to capital. Being in the strong position of being well capitalized can really hedge against a lot of fearful influences, I would imagine. So in today's day and time of recording, here we're recording, this is April 2022, spring 2022. There are lots and lots of current events taking place, and I have just this week been having discussions and promoting the idea of becoming your own banker to individuals, and it was brought up just yesterday. The fact that, well, yeah, but I won't have access to all of that, meaning premiums paid right away. Yes, true. And that is the question, right? Is when we realize that wealth must reside somewhere, and then we ask ourselves the question, where do we want that to reside? And when we learn some things like how commercial banks work, how whole life insurance works, what the banking function is, and who controls it in your life, we do get to the point of considering capitalization. Amassing capital, having access to capital, doing a build up. Even the word bank, as I was explaining yesterday, I'll say it again now. Bank, food bank, river bank, blood bank, snow bank, whatever it is that we're talking about, bank is just an amassing of whatever that thing is. So capitalization, capitalizing. Yes, there is a capitalization phase to a brand new policy. And when I say policy, I'm talking about a whole life policy with a mutual company that pays a dividend that's been properly structured for the banking purpose. There is a capitalization phase to a brand new policy. Now, there's not a loss of value, but there will be a loss of liquidity, meaning that, and every policy is going to be different. That should be based and is based with me. It is based with me off of more than one conversation about how that policy should be structured for your purposes both now and over the course of your lifetime, and to eventually meet your wishes for a tax-free transfer of wealth to your beneficiaries. But there is this capitalization phase in the beginning where there's not a loss of value, but there is a loss of liquidity. Now, when we do get around to looking at the right-hand side of an illustration, let's say, and that's not where I start. Just like Nash in his book starts with the human problems and banks and banking and whole life insurance, and we're talking about concepts first, principles first, before we get to the numbers. But when we do get to the numbers, when we do talk about the principles and we do lay the groundwork, before we look at the right-hand side of an illustration, a policy illustration, we must recognize that the left-hand side, where we're talking about premium payments, That's what's going to dictate the other side. So there is no right side without the left side. There is no cash value or death benefit or anything else, dividend, without premium payments, without the capitalization phase. And the most simple and the most original example that I could use would be Nelson's use of a grocery store as an example. A grocery store starts with someone going out and looking for information in that field, researching, and then getting property, and then building a massive building probably, and then employing quality people therein, and stocking the shelves, and furnishing it with excellent furniture, and all these different things. So there's a massive amount of capitalization taking place of time and effort and money before a single thing is sold. Massive, lengthy capitalization phase for that grocery store. But again, when we consider that in that store, we are going to be both consumer and owner. We're going to eat. We're going to consume from somewhere. And if we decide that we want to own the grocery store as well, we are the owner and the consumer, and there's no way around it. Yes, there's no way around the capitalization phase. Yes, in the very beginning, you will not have access to 100% of the value of the premiums that you have paid pursuant to those quality conversations that I was talking about to have a policy properly structured for you and your purposes. You will have access to a goodly portion. You'll probably have access to the vast majority of the premiums that you've paid immediately. And my definition of immediately is within 30 days. Within 30 days of a policy going in force, you can access capital from that policy. But yes, there will be a capitalization phase. And what we see is that a policy becomes more, and this is without practicing the infinite banking concept. This is just a properly structured policy with a mutual company that pays a dividend. That policy will become more and more efficient because there will not be an interruption of the compounding growth of the premiums that are paid. Even and if we start talking now about practicing infinite banking and accessing capital from the policy via policy loans, you're still not interrupting the compound interest, the compound growth of those premium payments, because a policy loan is a loan from a insurance company's general account. So the premium payments that you've made continue to grow compoundedly on weekends, holidays, during government shutdowns and global pandemics and all these other things that have happened over the course of time. There is a continual, constant, perpetual growth trend taking place in that policy, even though you're accessing capital from the policy. And that's all due to the fact, because a policy is a unilateral contract, meaning that when the company offers you a contract, it's a unilateral contract, meaning that when you pay the agreed upon premiums, everything else is on the company to perform. The guaranteed death benefit, all of the access, the contractual right that you're going to have to access capital in a known interest environment and to be able to participate in the overall experience of that company via a dividend and everything else. It's a unilateral contract where they offer you that policy contract. You pay the premiums, and then everything else is on the insurance company to perform within that contract. So again, in considering current events, there have always been current events. Let me point that out. There have always been current events. There have always been sicknesses and conflicts and wars and governments going up and governments going down. And there have always been natural disasters. There have always been things going on. So there have always been current events. When considering if you're vetting this idea of becoming your own banker, when is the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. Well, when's the next best time to plant a tree? Today. Okay. The best time to have capitalized would have been years and years ago, right? But maybe years and years ago we didn't know about this idea that you could become your own banker. I didn't. Not 20 years ago I did not. But when we do, when's the best time to begin capitalizing for ourselves? Right now. The next best time is going to be right now. The best time would have been years ago, but the next best time is going to be right now. Remember the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. What if you don't capitalize? That's my question. That was my question to that individual that I was having a discussion with yesterday. After presenting the idea of becoming your own banker, what if you don't capitalize? What does it look like if you don't purposefully, intentionally, proactively amass capital where you have control and access and can have the benefits of compound interest? What does it look like if you don't? Well, that puts you in the category, like all of us start, average American, bleeding out interest dollars. 34.5 cents of every dollar that we earn going to interest. Money that forever leaves our hands. That puts us in a position of being beholden to the commercial banks because we ignore the golden rule. He who has the gold makes rules. We didn't proactively and intentionally capitalize for ourselves. So if we look at the herd and what's happening to the herd, the average American, we get to decide, do we want to participate that way or would we like to do something different? Because capitalization is simply the capability to finance for ourselves, to account for our need of finance, to become our own bankers. Capitalization is the ability, the capability to finance for ourselves. And let's remember this, that time is going to go by either way, whether we capitalize or whether we don't, whether we capitalize a little or whether we capitalize a lot. Time is going to go by either way. So then we need to ask ourselves, will we be better off putting ourselves into a strong position of capitalization or not? Whether we live. And if we die, then are we not better off having accounted for our need of finance, which would inherently mean that we are getting protection for those that we love and care about? Yes, we're going to be better off either way. I'd much rather focus on the living benefits, but we can't ignore the fact that we're talking about permanent life insurance, permanent whole life insurance. And that comes with a death benefit. I mean, you can't have cash values without a death benefit, which is a relationship that's misunderstood so much in the insurance industry. Now, here I think about when having that conversation yesterday and now as I'm talking with you, I had a mentor and a friend tell me several years ago that hesitation or procrastination is the assassin of opportunity. That hesitation or procrastination is the assassin of opportunity. Now, what R. Nelson Nash said about opportunity is that when you are capitalized, opportunity will hunt you down. It will seek you out. There's just something about intentional and purposeful capitalization that attracts opportunity. Opportunities will present themselves. So remember, I believe in that. I got this from Nash as well. When you know what's going on, you know what to do. So when you know what's going on and you make the decision to capitalize for yourself, opportunity is going to seek you out. And the only thing that will interrupt that process, starting at least, is hesitation or procrastination. So if you're vetting this idea, I'm glad we're having this discussion, that you're tuning in and learning. And if you're a client on your way already, fantastic. I encourage you and I applaud you in your learning. But the only thing that's going to interrupt your progress is going to be hesitation or procrastination. So learn all that you can learn is what I'm saying. Learn all that you can learn. Study, ask questions, find out what you need to find out. I asked lots of questions when I was first introduced to this idea years ago. I read books. I watched presentations. I asked questions. I had conversations. But it was all to the purpose of, I knew, once I was even exposed to the phrase, becoming your own banker, I knew that I wanted to do that. And I waited just long enough to find out enough to know that I did want to do that thing, and then I started. So when you know what to do, don't look left or right. Straight ahead, put the blinders on, and go in that direction. Now, again, your education's going to continue, but like Nash says, more's going to be caught than taught. There's something about deciding and actually writing a check, and others have said it well. James Nethery says, it's all conversation until someone writes a check. Okay, and here we are talking about capitalization. So here you go. I can remember what it was like to write that first significant check for what was significant for my wife and I, for our very first policy, the very first time. There's something catching about that experience of writing a check, paying significant premiums, and then accessing the capital that you have at your disposal for the things that you're going to do anyway. For us, it was paying off some student loan debt. It was taking family vacations, because there we were, young family, working hard, pursuing careers, but growing a family and wanting to spend time together. So taking vacations and just all the other things that we wanted to be able to do together, and we're going to do. But taking accountability of capitalizing for ourselves, not abdicating that to someone else, being beholden to someone else's terms and conditions, having to submit 2 years of financials and a kidney and our firstborn and all these other different things. But instead, accounting for our own need of finance and proactively capitalizing a system that we privately own and control for our use. And not only our use, but by starting that process years ago, we've been practicing this idea for 7 years now. By starting that process years ago, what that's going to culminate in is us setting the bar so much higher for our children. My wife and I, we started from scratch. Actually, we started from less than scratch, because when we got married, we both had, she did better than I. She had very little, if any, student loan debt. She was an excellent student, great grades, brilliant lady, hard worker. I had student loan debt. I was not as diligent in my studies. So we started out with less than scratch, I suppose I should say. And we had a lot of help along the way. I'm not complaining. What I'm saying is that we didn't start out with so very much done for us. We had student loan debt to pay off. We had to buy vehicles for ourselves. We had to get property in a home for ourselves. We had to, and everybody does. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that we have decided along this journey now over the past several years of becoming our own banker that we would like to have a different starting point. And that doesn't just mean money, but we would like to have a different starting point for our children. So because of the capitalization that we've embraced, and that's what Nelson says, don't be afraid to capitalize. It's your system. You own the grocery store and you consume at the grocery store. That's just more capital to your system. So capitalize it well. But we've decided that we want to have a different level of education, understanding, and tools at our children's disposal, for example. And then our children's children. I believe that a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And my gracious, when you can begin to think 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 generations into the future. I mean, however far you can wrap your mind around long-range thinking, the better off you're going to be. And that's another of Nash's principles, is thinking long-range, including in your capitalization. Here I am, I suppose, and I haven't said this out loud for sure a lot, middle-aged. I'm 36 years old. Yes, I think I'm 36 years old. That's funny. I'm having to do a little math right here on the spot. I'm 36. I think I'm 36. I'm 36 years old, middle-aged. Now I'm laughing at myself thinking about how old I am or not, whether or not I can remember I'm 36 or 37. Regardless, I was at one point trying to make the point that my wife and I, want our children to have a different starting point in their understanding, in their financial education, and in their ability to become their own bankers as well, to not be beholden from the get-go like we were, to go to college if they want to go to college, to procure vehicles if they're going to be procuring vehicles for themselves, to get property for themselves, to not be servants to that system that has the average American bleeding out interest dollars, like Nash describes in his book, that every $1 out of $3 or more is going towards interest. We wanted something different. So because of the capitalization that my wife and I have embraced, it can be very, very different for our future generations and for the organizations and entities that we care about. Now, I'll say as well that when it comes to talking to prospective clients, there are times where I will be encouraging to clients to use their imagination, to stretch their thinking and to be ambitious, because maybe they come up with a number, but when I hear what it is that they're doing and that they want to do, perhaps we need to have some encouragement to think bigger so that we can actually capitalize in a way that will allow us to accomplish the things that we're doing and that we're wanting to do in the future. On the other hand, we will have clients sometimes who, they hear the idea that, well, we need to get premiums to equal income, and they're thinking perhaps too aggressively, and we need to dial that back or rein that back in a little bit for a first policy or for subsequent policies also. So somewhere between there. What Nash said is that the infinite banking concept is an exercise in imagination. And it's also an exercise of things like reason and logic. So somewhere between being very, very ambitious and thinking big and stretching ourselves and being reasonable and logical and deciding on how to capitalize this system, somewhere probably between those two, taking all things into consideration, is where we will arrive at capitalizing the beginning of our system or the next part of our system. Regardless, capitalization is necessary and it's good. So I know that there are a lot of questions in this day and time regarding the value of the dollar, market booms and busts, recessions, depressions, what ifs, hyperinflation, wars, all these different things. And again, my perspective is that there's nothing new under the sun. My perspective is that there have always been current events. So in considering that, come what may, will we or will we not be better off, come what may, and I can't control that, you can't control that. Will we or will we not be better off if we are well capitalized? So that's what I would encourage us to do, is to remember the golden rule, to remember not to be afraid to capitalize, and in fact, to fear not. Just in general, at all. Fear not. For my scholars out there, I've not found a place in Scripture where we are told to fear, but rather there's always someone on scene saying, "Fear not." And that's the helpful voice. That's the voice that's worth listening to. So I hope that this conversation has been helpful. And if you have any questions that you'd like to put down in the comment section, we would appreciate that. And if you'd like to have a conversation about how to implement the infinite banking concept into your household, in your business, and your investing, then you could reach us at 828-817-4223, or you can email durhamtalents@gmail.com. This has been a great pleasure for me. I look forward to our next conversation. Have a great day. Take care.
Why, hello. We meet again.
And I forgot where I was going with that. He saith unto them, "Fear not."
And in this corner, we have
What was I saying?
Coffee. Nectar of the gods. Gift of heaven. Liquid gold.
Yeah, we're cutting that one.